Dr. Alex Morgan adjusted his glasses and stared at the data streaming across his console. The Kepler's Rest research station hummed quietly around him, its systems running smoothly as they had for the past 3 years. Outside the reinforced windows, the red dwarf star that gave the system its name cast an eerie crimson glow over the mining colony below. Alex had grown used to the strange light, just as he had grown used to the isolation of his work. The research station orbited a gas giant on the edge of the Kepler's Rest system, far from the bustling mining operations and the few thousand colonists who called this place home. Alex preferred the quiet. Here, he could focus on his work without the constant interruptions that came with dealing with people. His team of 6 researchers spent their days cataloging the minor energy fluctuations and gravitational anomalies that were common in newly settled star systems. Today felt different, though. The readings coming in from the deep space sensors were unlike anything in the database. Alex leaned closer to his screen, his finger tracing the wave-like patterns that scrolled across the display. The energy signatures were too regular to be natural phenomena, yet they didn't match any of the artificial sources he knew. "Hey, Alex, you should see this," called out Dr. Maria Santos from across the main lab. Her voice carried a note of excitement that made Alex look up from his work. Maria was their xenolinguist, brought on specifically to help interpret any alien communications they might encounter. She spent most of her time translating the mundane reports from the mining colony, but occasionally she found something interesting in the background chatter. Alex walked over to Maria's station, his footsteps echoing in the spacious lab. The walls were lined with equipment racks, their lights blinking in the dim illumination. Maria's screen showed a complex waveform that pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. "Look at the frequency modulation," she said, pointing to the display. "It's not random. There's a pattern here, but it's not like anything we've seen before." Alex studied the waveform, his scientific mind immediately recognizing the implications. "How far out are these readings coming from?" Maria checked her instruments. "The source is approximately 0.3 light-years out, moving on an intercept course with our system. At current velocity, they'll arrive in about 6 days. 6 days. That wasn't much time to prepare for first contact, assuming these energy signatures indicated some kind of spacecraft." Alex made a mental note to contact the colony administration and the system defense coordinator. Protocol demanded that any potential alien contact be reported immediately, even if the evidence was circumstantial. Meanwhile, on the other side of the system, Commander Lisa Barton was dealing with her own unusual situation. She stood on the bridge of the survey ship Horizon, watching her sensors paint an impossible picture of space around them. The Horizon was a standard exploration vessel, equipped with the latest in long-range scanning technology. Lisa had been commanding survey missions for 15 years, and she had never seen readings like these. "Commander, we're getting multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace," reported Lieutenant Danny Kim, the ship's tactical officer. His voice was calm, but Lisa could hear the tension underneath. Danny was young, fresh out of the academy, but he was good at his job. "How many?" Lisa asked, moving to stand behind his chair. "At least 24, maybe more. They're not following any known flight patterns. In fact, they don't seem to be using conventional propulsion at all." Lisa frowned. The Horizon's sensors were state-of-the-art, capable of tracking dozens of vessels simultaneously. But the contacts appearing on her display didn't behave like ships. They moved with fluid grace, changing direction and speed in ways that defied physics. Some appeared to shimmer in and out of existence, while others seemed to bend space around them as they traveled. "Are we detecting any communication attempts?" she asked. "No, ma'am. But the energy signatures are intense. Whatever these things are, they're putting out power levels that should be impossible without massive reactors." Lisa considered her options. Standard first contact protocols called for establishing communication before taking any aggressive action, But these vessels weren't responding to hails, and their behavior was erratic enough to be concerning. She made the decision that any experienced commander would make. "Danny, send a general distress call to the nearest patrol squadron, include all sensor data, and recommend immediate investigation, and put me through to Kepler's Rest, Colony Administration." "Yes, ma'am." As Lisa waited for her communication to go through, she studied the strange vessels on her main display. They were large, much larger than any human ship, and their shapes were organic rather than geometric. Some looked like massive sea creatures, their surfaces rippling with bioluminescent patterns. Others resembled enormous flowers, petals opening and closing in slow motion. The ships didn't appear hostile, but they didn't appear friendly either. They simply existed, moving through space with purpose that Lisa couldn't understand. Back on the research station, Alex was dealing with bureaucratic resistance to his warnings. The colony administrator, a middle-aged man named Robert Hayes, seemed more annoyed than concerned by Alex's report. "Dr. Morgan, we've been over this. You're talking about energy fluctuations that could be explained by any number of natural phenomena. We can't just shut down the mining operations every time your instruments pick up something unusual." "But Robert, the patterns are too regular." "Look at this data," Alex said, pushing his tablet across the administrator's desk. The screen showed the waveforms Maria had detected, the mathematical precision of their structure clearly visible. Robert glanced at the display without really seeing it. He had been dealing with scientists and their discoveries for years. Most of the time what they thought was significant turned out to be nothing more than equipment malfunctions or background radiation. "Alex, I appreciate your concern, but we have a colony to run. The mining operations bring in enough credits to keep this place functioning. I can't justify shutting them down based on some unusual readings." Before Alex could respond, Maria burst into Robert's office, her face flushed with excitement and concern. "Robert, you need to see this. The energy signatures are getting stronger, and they're definitely artificial. We're detecting what appears to be structured electromagnetic emissions. This isn't natural phenomena anymore." Robert looked from Maria to Alex and back again. The urgency in their voices finally penetrated his bureaucratic skepticism. "What exactly are you saying?" he asked. "We think alien ships are entering our system," Alex said simply. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Robert had heard about first contact scenarios during his training, but he had never expected to deal with one personally. The implications were staggering: diplomatic protocols, economic considerations, the potential for conflict or cooperation. "How long until they reach the inner system?" he asked. "Less than 5 days," Maria replied, "and they're accelerating." Robert made a decision that would later be praised by historians and second-guessed by politicians. He activated the emergency communication array and sent a priority message to the Colonial Defense Force, the nearest military installation, and the Interstellar Survey Bureau. Whatever was coming toward Kepler's Rest, the galaxy needed to know about it. As the three of them watched the readouts in Alex's lab, none of them could have imagined that their discovery would change everything humanity thought it knew about its place in the universe. The ships approaching their system carried with them not just advanced technology, but a terrible secret about humanity's true history. A secret that had been buried for millennia and was about to be violently unearthed. The energy signatures continued to grow stronger as the alien fleet moved deeper into the Kepler's Rest system, their organic vessels casting strange shadows against the red light of the system's star. Soon, the myth of humanity's extinction would be tested against the reality of their return, and the galaxy would never be the same. The alien fleet moved through the Kepler's Rest system like ghosts, their massive organic vessels gliding past asteroids and cometary debris with an otherworldly grace. Commander Lisa Barton watched from the bridge of the horizon as the strange ships positioned themselves in a perfect geometric pattern around the system's inner planets. Their movements were too precise to be random, too coordinated to be anything but deliberate. Lisa had spent the last 18 hours trying to establish communication with the fleet, but every attempt met with silence. The ships didn't respond. 2 standard hails, emergency frequencies, or even the mathematical sequences that usually worked with unknown alien species. It was as if the vessels were completely ignoring her presence. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the lead vessel," announced Communications Officer Jenny Walsh. Her voice carried a mixture of excitement and nervousness. First contact situations were rare enough that most officers went their entire careers without experiencing one. On screen, Lisa ordered, moving to the main display. The view changed from the external sensors to show what appeared to be a conference chamber aboard one of the alien ships. The room was organic in design, with walls that seemed to breathe and pulse with inner light. Seated around a central table were beings that looked like living sculptures, tall, graceful creatures with elongated limbs and skin that shifted between deep purple and silver. The being at the head of the table stood and approached the communication array. Its features were androgynous, with large, luminous eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. When it spoke, its voice was translated by the ship's universal translator into perfect English, though Lisa could hear undertones of something older and more alien beneath the words. "I am Executor Varn of the Vorthok Guardian Fleet. Your presence in this system has been noted. Human vessel Horizon. You will withdraw immediately to the outer system and await further instructions." Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. They knew about humanity. They knew about humans. But something in the way the aliens spoke made her pause. There was a strange emphasis on the word human, as if it were a title rather than a species name. "This is Commander Lisa Barton of the Colonial Survey Service. We have no hostile intentions, Executor Varn. We're here on a peaceful exploration mission." Executor Varn's expression didn't change, but Lisa could sense something like amusement from the alien. "Peaceful exploration of what, exactly?" "This system has been designated a restricted zone for the past 50,000 years. Your kind has no right to be here." "My kind," Lisa repeated, confused. "There are other humans in this system." Before Executor Varn could respond, the communication display flickered and changed to show the research station, where Dr. Alex Morgan and his team were working frantically to analyze the alien fleet's energy signatures. Maria Santos appeared on screen, her face pale with excitement. "Commander Barton, you need to see this data. The energy patterns these ships are generating. They're not just propulsion systems. They're broadcasting some kind of signal, and it's directed at our research station specifically." Lisa switched her display to show both communications simultaneously. "Executor Varn, what is your fleet broadcasting to our research facility?" The alien's expression grew cold. "Ancient warnings, human, reminders of what your species was, and what became of it? We would not wish the same fate upon these newer civilizations." "What are you talking about?" Lisa demanded. "Humans are a thriving species. We have colonies throughout this sector." Executor Varn's laugh was like the sound of wind through crystal. "How quaint. Your people have been extinct for millennia. You are either delusional, or you are something else entirely. Something that has somehow learned to mimic the form and speech of the legendary humans." On the research station, Alex and Maria exchanged glances. This was getting stranger by the minute. If these aliens believed humanity was extinct, then they were either operating on incredibly outdated information, or there was something else going on here that nobody understood. "Executor Varn," Alex said, pushing his way into the communication. "This is Dr. Alex Morgan from the research station. We are definitely human beings. We have documentation, genetic records, historical data that proves our species' continued existence." The alien studied Alex with those vast, ancient eyes. "Documentation can be falsified. Genetic manipulation is common among younger species. Show me proof that cannot be disputed. Maria stepped forward, her scientific mind racing. What if we show you our genetic sequencing? Human DNA has specific markers that can't be replicated artificially. Executor Varn conferred briefly with the other beings at his table, speaking in a language that the universal translator couldn't interpret. After a moment, he turned back to the screen. Very well. Transmit your genetic data for analysis, but know this. If you are proven to be what you claim, it changes everything. The Great Purge was supposed to have eliminated your species entirely. The fact that survivors exist calls into question everything we have been taught about galactic history. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Lisa and her crew staring at the blank screen. The Great Purge. The word sent chills down Lisa's spine. Whatever had happened to humanity in this alien's past, it hadn't been pleasant. Dr. Robert Hayes, the colony administrator, was having his own crisis of understanding. The emergency messages he had sent out had brought responses from the Colonial Defense Force, but the nearest military squadron was still 2 days away at best. In the meantime, he had to deal with a fleet of alien ships that seemed to think humanity was a myth, and apparently a dangerous one at that. We need to evacuate the colony, he told his emergency staff during a hastily convened meeting. If these aliens believe we're a threat, we can't take any chances. But sir, protested his deputy administrator, a young woman named Carol Jenkins. We don't even know what they want. Maybe this is all just a misunderstanding. Carol, they're talking about something called the Great Purge, Robert replied grimly. That doesn't sound like a misunderstanding to me. That sounds like they're planning to eliminate us. Meanwhile, back on the horizon, Lisa was working with her science officer, Dr. James Peterson, to analyze the alien fleet's technology. The ships were unlike anything in the human database, living constructs that seemed to grow rather than being built, powered by energy sources that defied conventional physics. Their propulsion systems appeared to manipulate space-time directly, James reported, his eyes wide with wonder and concern. They're not just traveling through space, they're folding it around themselves. This technology is centuries beyond anything we've developed, and they think we're extinct, Lisa muttered. What kind of history have we been erased from? The answer came sooner than expected. Executive Varn contacted them again, this time with a different alien aboard his ship, a younger being with curious eyes and an expression that suggested scientific interest rather than hostility. I am Commander Zara of the Vorthok Historical Preservation Division. The new alien introduced herself. I have been studying your transmitted genetic data, and the results are ... unexpected. What do you mean? Lisa asked. Your DNA matches the historical records of Homo sapiens exactly. Every marker, every sequence, every variation that was documented before the Great Purge. This is impossible. Our records state that the last humans were destroyed 50,000 years ago. Zara activated a holographic display that showed images of ancient humans, people who looked remarkably similar to the crew of the Horizon. The images were accompanied by text in the alien language, but the universal translator managed to provide rough translations. Humans, a warlike species that threatened galactic stability through aggressive expansion and technological advancement, eliminated during the Great Purge to preserve peace among civilized worlds. Lisa felt anger building in her chest. That's not what happened, is it? You're not telling us the whole story. Commander Zara hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, Lisa saw something she recognized, the look of someone who had discovered that everything they believed might be wrong. I have access to some records that are not commonly shared, Zara said quietly. Records that suggest the Great Purge may have been misrepresented, that humanity may have been protecting the galaxy from something far worse. Before she could elaborate, Executor Varn's voice cut through the communication. Enough, Zara. These creatures may be what they claim, but that does not change our orders. The blockade will remain in place until the High Council can be consulted. The transmission ended, but the questions it raised would not be so easily dismissed, as the alien fleet maintained its position around the Kepler's rest system. The truth about humanity's past began to emerge from the shadows of history, a truth that would force both species to reconsider everything they thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the tactical display on his ship's bridge, his jaw clenched in frustration. The military response fleet he commanded had arrived at the Kepler's rest system to find it completely surrounded by alien vessels that defied every principle of known spacecraft design. The organic-looking ships pulsed with an eerie blue light, their movements graceful yet menacing. "Sir, we're being hailed by the lead alien vessel," reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Sarah Walsh. She was young and eager, but her voice carried a note of tension that told Jake she understood the gravity of their situation. On screen, Jake ordered, settling into his command chair. The bridge of the destroyer Concorde was a hive of activity, with officers monitoring sensors, checking weapons systems, and coordinating with the other ships in his fleet. They were outnumbered at least 3-1, and the aliens' technology appeared far more advanced than anything in the human arsenal. The screen flickered to life, showing the same conference chamber they had seen before. Executor Varn appeared once again, his expression unreadable but somehow conveying disapproval. "Captain Morrison of the Colonial Defense Force," Varn said, reading from a display beside him. "Your arrival was expected. Withdraw your fleet to the outer system immediately. This is not a request." Jake leaned forward in his chair. "Executor Varn, I'm here to ensure the safety of the human colonists in this system. Your unauthorized blockade constitutes a violation of interstellar law." "Unauthorized?" Varn's laugh was cold and humorless. "Young Captain, you speak of laws to beings who wrote the first codes of galactic conduct. Your species does not exist in our records. You are either an elaborate hoax or a dangerous anomaly that must be contained." Before Jake could respond, his executive officer, Commander Lisa Barton, stepped forward. She had been part of the initial survey team that encountered the aliens and had more experience with them than anyone else in the fleet. "Executor Varn, I was here first. These humans are real. We've provided genetic proof, historical documentation. There has to be some mistake in your records." Varn's gaze shifted to Lisa, and for a moment, Jake thought he saw something like curiosity in those ancient eyes. "Commander Barton, your loyalty to these creatures is admirable, if misplaced. The Great Purge was documented across thousands of worlds. Humanity was eradicated 50,000 years ago. The very concept of your continued existence is impossible." Jake felt his temper rising. "Then explain why we're sitting here talking to you. Explain why our genetic markers match your historical records exactly. Something doesn't add up, and I intend to find out what." The communication ended abruptly, leaving Jake staring at a blank screen. He turned to his tactical officer, Commander Mike Torres. "Status report." "Sir, the alien fleet maintains its positions around the inner planets. No hostile movements detected, but their energy readings are off the charts. Whatever they're powering is drawing more energy than our entire fleet uses in a month." Jake nodded grimly. They were in a standoff, and he didn't like the odds. These aliens had technology that made human ships look primitive by comparison. If they decided to attack, his fleet wouldn't last long. Meanwhile, on the research station, Dr. Robert Hayes was dealing with a crisis of his own. The colony's population of 3,000 people was growing increasingly nervous as news of the alien blockade spread. Emergency shelters were filling up with families seeking protection, and supplies were being rationed in preparation for a possible evacuation. "Dr. Hayes, you need to see this," called out Dr. Maria Santos from the main lab. Her voice carried an excitement that made Robert hurry over to her. Workstation Maria's screen showed ancient texts that she had managed to access through the alien communication channels. The documents were written in the Vorthok language, but the universal translator was slowly working through the complex grammar and syntax. "What am I looking at?" Robert asked. "History books," Maria replied. "Real history, not the sanitized version they've been teaching. Look at this entry here. It mentions humans as protectors, not conquerors. Apparently, humanity was fighting something called the Void Collective when they supposedly went extinct." Robert leaned closer to the screen, reading the translated text. The passage described a parasitic intelligence that consumed entire civilizations by converting their populations into mindless drones. According to the historical records, humanity had been the galaxy's first line of defense against this threat. But if that's true, then the Great Purge. Robert's voice trailed off as he realized the implications. Was a cover-up, Maria finished for him. They didn't eliminate humanity because they were a threat. They eliminated them because they were the only thing standing between the galaxy and this Void Collective. The revelation was staggering. Everything the Vorthok believed about humanity was wrong. The species they considered extinct had actually been the galaxy's protectors, sacrificing themselves to save countless worlds from a greater evil. Back on the Concorde, Jake was receiving reports from his science officer, Dr. Emily Chen. She had been analyzing the alien fleet's energy signatures and had made a disturbing discovery. "Captain, I think I know what their ships are doing," she reported, her face pale with concern. "They're not just blocking the system, they're creating some kind of dimensional barrier. If my calculations are correct, nothing can enter or leave this system without their permission." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean we're trapped here? Not just us, sir. The entire system. No ships can leave, no ships can enter. It's like they've put the whole place in a bottle." Before Jake could respond to this alarming news, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Lieutenant Walsh's voice came over the intercom, tight with urgency. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the research station. Dr. Morgan says he's found something critical in the alien databases." Jake switched to the research station's channel and saw Alex Morgan's face on his screen, flushed with excitement and fear. "Captain Morrison, you need to hear this. I've been going through the historical records that Maria accessed, and I found references to a human fleet that was supposedly destroyed in the Great Purge. But the records are inconsistent. Some accounts say the humans were eliminated, others say they went into hiding to continue fighting the Void. What does that mean for us?" Jake asked. "It means we might not be alone," Alex replied. "If humanity survived the Great Purge, there could be other colonies out there, other humans who have been hiding from the galaxy for 50,000 years. The implications were enormous. If there were other human colonies scattered throughout the galaxy, then humanity's extinction was nothing more than a myth perpetuated by those who had rewritten history. But it also meant that the Void Collective might still be out there, waiting for the right moment to strike." Jake was still processing this information when his sensors officer called out a warning. "Captain, multiple contacts approaching from the outer system. They're moving fast, and they're not on our fleet roster." Jake turned to his main display and felt his blood run cold. Dozens of ships were emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system, but these weren't human vessels. They were different. From the Vorthok ships to sleek, angular constructs that moved with mechanical precision. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures that match the Void Collective from our historical databases," reported Dr. Chen, her voice barely above a whisper. The new arrivals moved toward the system with purpose, ignoring the Vorthok blockade as if it weren't even there. Whatever dimensional barrier the aliens had created, it wasn't stopping these newcomers. Jake made a decision that would either save his fleet or doom it. "All ships, prepare for combat. It looks like we're about to find out what the Vorthok have really been protecting us from." As the mysterious fleet approached the Kepler's rest system, the truth about humanity's past began to unravel, revealing a conspiracy that spanned millennia and a threat that had never truly been defeated. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine not just the fate of the colonists, but the future of the entire galaxy. The sleek, angular ships of the Void Collective moved with a terrifying precision, their metallic surfaces reflecting the red light of Kepler's rests, star-like polished mirrors. Captain Jake Morrison watched as the alien fleet approached, his mind racing through options that all seemed equally hopeless. The Vorthok blockade had been bad enough, but now they were facing an enemy nobody had seen in over 50,000 years. "Captain, the lead ship is hailing us," Lieutenant Sarah Walsh announced from her station on the Concorde's bridge. Her hands hovered nervously over her console as she waited for Jake's order. "On screen," Jake said, his voice steady despite the knot tightening in his stomach. The main display flickered to life, showing a dark, featureless void where a face should have been. The figure, if it could even be called that, was humanoid in shape, but lacked any distinguishing features. Its presence radiated cold indifference, and when it spoke, its voice was a chorus of whispers layered together into something almost musical, yet deeply unsettling. "You are not authorized to occupy this system," the being said, its words translated by the universal communicator, but still carrying an eerie echo. "Withdraw immediately, or be assimilated." Jake leaned forward in his command chair, his eyes narrowing. "Assimilated? That sounds awfully permanent. Who are you, and why are you here?" "We are the Void Collective," the figure replied without emotion. "We consume, we grow, we become stronger. Resistance is futile." Before Jake could respond, Executor Varn appeared on a secondary screen, his expression tense but resolute. "Captain Morrison, these beings are the reason your species was erased from existence. They cannot be reasoned with." Jake glanced between the two displays, his mind struggling to process the implications. Humanity's extinction hadn't been an act of aggression, it had been a desperate attempt to stop this thing. He turned back to the Void Collective representative. "And what happens if we don't withdraw?" Jake asked, buying time while his crew prepared the fleet's defenses. The figure tilted its head slightly, as though amused by the question. "Your vessels will be dismantled. Your minds will be absorbed. Your essence will become part of the greater whole." Jake clenched his jaw. There would be no negotiation, no compromise. This wasn't just war, it was extermination, all right, he said finally. "You want us gone. Come and make us." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge silent, except for the hum of the ship's systems. Jake stood up and addressed his crew. "Everyone, listen carefully. These things aren't just another enemy, they're parasites. If they get past our lines, they'll destroy everything we've built here. We hold the line until reinforcements arrive, understood?" His officers nodded grimly, each returning to their stations with renewed determination. Outside the ship's windows, the Void Collective fleet began to spread out, surrounding the human and Vorthok forces in a slow, methodical maneuver. Meanwhile, aboard the research station, Dr. Alex Morgan and Maria Santos worked feverishly to decode more information from the Vorthok databases. What they found only deepened the mystery and the danger. "Alex, look at this," Maria said, pointing to a series of ancient diagrams on her screen. The images depicted massive structures resembling artificial moons, each marked with symbols that matched those found in humanity's oldest archaeological sites. "These were human installations," Alex murmured, studying the patterns. "But they weren't colonies, they were weapons platforms, designed to fight the void." Maria scrolled through more data, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "According to these records, humanity created something called the quantum resonance device. It disrupted the void's ability to control its drones." "Do we know how it worked?" Alex asked, leaning closer. "Not exactly," Maria admitted. "But there's mention of it being powered by harmonic frequencies generated from human DNA. Whatever it did, it must have been devastating, because after its use, the void retreated." Alex felt a spark of hope amidst the chaos. If humanity had once developed such a weapon, Maybe they could recreate it or at least adapt parts of its technology. But doing so would require access to materials and resources far beyond what the research station possessed. We need to tell Captain Morrison about this, Alex said firmly. If we can find remnants of those old platforms, we might stand a chance. Back on the Concorde, Jake was already preparing for battle. His science officer, Dr. Emily Chen, had identified several weak points in the Void Collective's formation based on their energy signatures. While the enemy ships were advanced, they relied heavily on interconnected networks to coordinate their movements, a vulnerability the humans could exploit. Commander Barton, Jake said, turning to Lisa, I want you to take 3 destroyers and hit their flank. Focus fire on those central nodes. If we can disrupt their network, it might buy us some breathing room. Lisa nodded sharply. Understood, sir. I'll signal the other captains. As Lisa left the bridge to oversee the operation personally, Jake turned his attention to the Vorthok fleet. Executor Varn had promised support, but so far, the aliens had remained passive observers, content to let the humans engage the Void directly. Executor Varn, Jake said, opening a channel to the alien commander. If you're planning to help, now would be a good time. Varn's response came quickly. Our orders are clear. Contain the threat within this system. However, he hesitated, then continued. Some among us believe your claims of humanity's survival. Commander Zara has volunteered to assist your efforts. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. Moments later, one of the organic Vorthok ships detached from the blockade and moved toward the human fleet. Aboard it was Zara herself, accompanied by a small contingent of scientists and engineers. When she contacted Jake via communicator, her tone was calm but urgent. Captain Morrison, my people have studied your species' history closely. If what you say is true, then humanity may hold the key to defeating the Void once and for all. Allow us to work with your researchers to uncover whatever secrets remain hidden. Jake didn't hesitate. Agreed. Dock with the research station. Work with Dr. Morgan, he's leading our efforts to understand the Void's weaknesses. The battle began with a suddenness that caught everyone off guard. The Void Collective launched waves of smaller craft, each bristling with weapons capable of tearing through hulls like paper. The Concorde shuddered under the impact of the first volley, alarms blaring as damage reports flooded in from every section of the ship. Shields at 60%, shouted Mike Torres, the tactical officer. They're targeting our engines. Hold steady, Jake ordered. Return fire on those central nodes. We need to break their coordination. The human fleet responded with disciplined salvos, focusing their firepower on the designated targets. Explosions lit up space as Void ships exploded in bursts of light, but for every one destroyed, 2 more took its place. It was clear that sheer numbers alone wouldn't win this fight. On the research station, Alex and Maria worked alongside Zara and her team, poring over fragments of data recovered from the Vorthok archives. Slowly, a picture began to emerge, just of humanity's role in the Great Purge, but of the sacrifices made to protect the galaxy. Alex, Maria said suddenly, her voice trembling with excitement, look at this. It's a map of the system before the Purge. There's a structure here. She pointed to a location near one of the gas giants. It matches the description of the quantum resonance device. Zara examined the map closely. This could be what we're looking for. If the device still exists, it may give us the edge we need. Jake received the news during a brief lull in the fighting. How long will it take to get there? He asked. At least 12 hours, Alex replied. And that's assuming we can navigate through the Void's forces without getting torn apart. Do it, Jake said without hesitation. We'll cover you. Just find that device. As the Concorde led a diversionary assault to draw the Void's attention away from the research station, Alex, Maria, and Zara boarded a small shuttle and set course for the mysterious structure. Along the way, they exchanged theories about humanity's true history and the burden of responsibility that came with knowing the truth. The Vorthok believed they were protecting the galaxy by erasing us from existence, Zara mused. But in doing so, they left it vulnerable to the very threat they sought to eliminate. Alex nodded thoughtfully. Maybe that's why the Void came back to finish what it started. Without humanity to stop them, no one else stood a chance. The shuttle arrived at the coordinates hours later, finding a derelict installation buried beneath layers of asteroid debris. As they explored the ancient structure, they discovered evidence of humanity's ingenuity and its desperation. Panels lined with crystalline circuits glowed faintly, responding to their presence as if awakened from a long slumber. "This is it," Maria whispered, running her hand over a control panel, etched with symbols she recognized from Earth's oldest ruins. The quantum resonance device. But activating it wouldn't be easy. The machinery required a specific harmonic frequency, one that only human DNA could provide, and time was running out. Back in orbit, the human fleet was losing ground, their ships battered and outnumbered. "We'll need volunteers," Alex said grimly, realizing the cost of what they were about to do. People whose genetic code can interface with the device, people who understand what's at stake. The quantum resonance device hummed softly as Alex Morgan and Maria Santos worked to activate it, their hands moving quickly over the ancient control panels. The device was enormous, a labyrinth of crystalline circuits and glowing conduits that stretched across the derelict installation like the veins of some long-dead creature. It responded to their presence with faint pulses of light, its mechanisms stirring to life after millennia of dormancy. Zara stood nearby, her luminous eyes fixed on the machinery. She had never seen anything like it before, technology so advanced that it seemed almost alive. To her species, humanity's creations were relics of legend, artifacts from a time when humans were said to have walked among the stars as protectors. Now, seeing this device firsthand, she began to understand why the Vorthok had feared them and why they might still be needed. "We're close," Alex said, his voice tense but focused. "The system is starting to recognize our genetic markers, but we need more input to stabilize the harmonic frequency." Maria nodded, glancing at the small group of volunteers who had accompanied them. Each person placed their hand on designated panels etched with symbols that matched human DNA sequences. The panels lit up in response, casting soft beams of light across the chamber. "It's working," Maria whispered, watching as the device's core began to glow brighter. "But it's not enough yet. We need more energy to reach the resonance threshold." Zara stepped forward, her expression determined. "Let me assist. My people may not share your biology, but our technology can amplify the signal." Alex hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Do it. But carefully, the harmonic frequencies are delicate. If we push too hard, the entire system could collapse." Zara extended her slender fingers toward one of the panels, her skin shimmering with an inner light. As she touched the surface, the device emitted a low, resonant hum, its glow intensifying until the chamber was bathed in a brilliant blue light. The volunteers winced at the sudden surge of energy, but the readings on the monitors showed steady progress. "We're almost there," Alex said, his voice rising above the growing hum. "Just a little more." Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled violently. A distant explosion echoed through the installation, shaking debris loose from the walls. Zara turned toward the entrance, her sharp eyes catching movement outside. "They've found us," she said grimly. "Void drones are approaching. We don't have much time." Back in orbit, Captain Jake Morrison fought to hold the line against the relentless assault of the Void Collective. His fleet was battered and bruised, their shields flickering under the weight of continuous fire. The Concorde itself had sustained heavy damage, forcing him to transfer command temporarily to the secondary bridge while repairs were underway. "Captain, the Void ships are breaking through our perimeter." Lieutenant Sarah Walsh shouted, her voice tight with urgency. "If we don't regroup soon, they'll overwhelm us." Jake clenched his fists, staring at the tactical display. The Void Collective's forces were overwhelming, their numbers seemingly endless. Every destroyed ship was replaced by 2 more, and their coordinated attacks left little room for countermeasures. "Hold formation," Jake ordered. "We can't let them reach the research station. Not until we know what Dr. Morgan is doing down there." Commander Lisa Barton's voice crackled over the comm channel. "Sir, I've got 3 destroyers holding position near the gas giant. If we pull back now, we risk exposing the shuttle team to direct attack." "I know," Jake replied, his jaw tightening. "But if we stay here, we're going to lose everything. Fall back to defensive positions around the station. Protect that installation at all costs." As the human fleet retreated, the Void Collective pressed its advantage, sending waves of smaller craft to harass the retreating ships. Explosions lit up space as fighters clashed in chaotic dogfights, their weapons flashing like fireworks against the dark backdrop of the void. Inside the installation, the situation grew increasingly dire. The void drones had breached the outer defenses, their metallic forms swarming through the corridors with mechanical precision. Zara drew a weapon from her belt, a sleek, organic-looking device that pulsed with energy and took up a defensive position near the entrance. "I'll hold them off," she said firmly. "You focus on activating the device." Alex hesitated, torn between gratitude and guilt. "Zara, you don't have to do this. You're risking your life for us." She smiled faintly, her expression unreadable. "I'm risking my life for everyone. If humanity truly is the key to defeating the void, then protecting you is the most important thing I can do." With that, she turned and disappeared into the shadows of the corridor, her weapon already firing as the first wave of drones approached. The sound of battle echoed through the installation, punctuated by bursts of light and the metallic screech of damaged machines. Alex forced himself to focus, turning back to the task at hand. "Maria, how much longer?" "We're at 85%, Maria replied, her eyes glued to the monitor. "But the harmonics are destabilizing. Without Zara's amplification, we might lose the connection entirely." "Don't think about that," Alex snapped, his frustration boiling over. "Just keep pushing. We didn't come this far to fail now." Maria nodded, her hands flying across the controls as she adjusted the frequency inputs. The volunteers continued to feed their genetic data into the system, their faces pale but resolute. The air around them crackled with energy, the device's core pulsing faster and brighter with each passing second. Outside, Zara fought with a ferocity that surprised even herself. Her weapon discharged bolts of energy that tore through the void drones, but for every one she destroyed, 2 more appeared to take its place. Despite the odds, she held her ground, her movements fluid and precise. "You won't get past me," she muttered under her breath, firing another volley. "Not today." Her thoughts drifted briefly to Commander Barton, whose determination and courage had inspired her to question everything she had been taught about humanity. These humans weren't myths or legends, they were real, flawed, and extraordinary, and they deserved a chance to reclaim their place in the galaxy. A sudden impact sent her sprawling to the floor as a drone slammed into her from behind. Before it could strike again, she rolled to the side and fired point blank, reducing it to a pile of smoldering wreckage. Breathing heavily, she climbed to her feet, only to find herself surrounded by a dozen more drones. "Zara," Alex's voice called out from the main chamber. "Fall back. We're almost ready." She glanced toward the source of the voice, then back at the advancing drones. There was no way she could fight them all, but she couldn't abandon the humans either. Summoning every ounce of strength, she unleashed a final burst of energy from her weapon, creating a temporary barrier that slowed the drone's advance. "I'm coming," she shouted, sprinting back toward the chamber. Inside, the quantum resonance device reached critical mass, its core glowing so brightly that it illuminated every corner of the installation. Alex and Maria exchanged a look of triumph and exhaustion, knowing they had done everything they could. "It's ready," Maria said, her voice barely audible over the deafening hum. All we need to do is initiate the sequence. Alex nodded, placing his hand on the central console. Do it. Before Maria could press the activation button, the chamber doors burst open, and Zara staggered inside, her body covered in cuts and bruises. Behind her, the void drones surged forward, their mechanical limbs clawing at the air. Activate it. Now, Zara yelled, raising her weapon to cover the entrance. Maria hesitated for a fraction of a second, then slammed her palm down on the activation panel. The device roared to life, emitting a shockwave of energy that rippled outward in all directions. The void drones froze mid-motion, their systems disrupted by the harmonic frequencies generated by the device. Outside, the effect was immediate and devastating. The Void Collective's ships shuddered violently, their interconnected networks collapsing under the strain of the resonance field. One by one, they began to disintegrate, their metallic hulls crumbling into dust as the quantum energy consumed them. On the Concorde, Jake watched in awe as the enemy fleet dissolved before his eyes. What just happened? He asked, turning to his science officer. Dr. Emily Chen stared at her instruments, her face pale with disbelief. It's the quantum resonance device. It's disrupting the Void's ability to maintain cohesion. They're falling apart. Jake allowed himself a moment of relief, but it was short-lived. The device's power output was unstable, and the readings suggested it wouldn't last much longer. We need to get those people out of there, he said urgently. Send a rescue shuttle immediately. In the installation, the chamber was filled with a blinding light as the device reached its peak output. Zara, Alex, and Maria shielded their eyes, knowing they had only moments before the structure collapsed under the strain. Go, Zara shouted, pushing the others toward the exit. I'll make sure nothing follows you. Alex shook his head. No, we're not leaving without you. Zara smiled faintly, her expression filled with quiet resolve. This isn't goodbye, just ... a new beginning. With that, she activated the device's self-destruct mechanism, sealing the entrance behind her as the others escaped. Moments later, the installation erupted in a massive explosion, obliterating the remaining Void drones and severing their connection to the collective. The rescue shuttle descended through the debris field surrounding the derelict installation, its engines straining against the turbulence caused by the explosion. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the Concorde's bridge as the small craft approached, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and dread. The quantum resonance device had worked, had exceeded expectations, but at a cost he wasn't sure they were prepared to pay. Sir, we've got confirmation, Lieutenant Sarah Walsh reported, her voice tight with emotion. Dr. Morgan and Dr. Santos are aboard the shuttle. But ... Zara stayed behind. Jake closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of that statement settle over him. Zara had sacrificed herself to ensure the success of their mission, buying them enough time to escape while sealing the fate of the Void drones. Her actions weren't just brave, they were selfless in a way that transcended species or allegiance. She had fought alongside humanity, not because she owed them anything, but because she believed in what they represented. Protectors of the galaxy. Bring them aboard, Jake said finally, opening his eyes. His voice was steady, but there was no hiding the sadness beneath it. And prepare medical teams. They're going to need attention after what they've been through. Inside the shuttle, Alex Morgan sat slumped against the bulkhead, his face streaked with soot and exhaustion. Maria Santos sat beside him, her hands trembling as she clutched a datapad containing the last fragments of information salvaged from the installation. Neither of them spoke. Words felt inadequate in the face of what they had witnessed and lost. Maria glanced at Alex, her expression heavy with guilt. Do you think we could have saved her? Alex shook his head slowly. No, not without losing everything. Zara knew that. She made her choice. It wasn't an answer that brought comfort, but it was the truth. Zara had understood the stakes better than any of them. By staying behind, She hadn't just protected their escape, she had ensured the device's destruction wouldn't be undone. The Void Collective's presence in the system had been erased, but the scars left behind would take far longer to heal. When the shuttle docked with the Concorde, medics rushed aboard to tend to the survivors. Alex and Maria allowed themselves to be led away, their bodies battered, but alive. As they passed through the corridors of the ship, crew members stopped to watch silently, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and sorrow. These two scientists had risked everything to activate a weapon that had turned the tide of battle not just for the humans, but for the entire galaxy. In the hours that followed, the human fleet regrouped around the remains of the Kepler's rest system. The Vorthok blockade had dissolved into chaos after the destruction of the Void Collective's forces, leaving Executor Varn and his people struggling to process what had happened. For millennia, they had operated under the belief that humanity was extinct, a dangerous myth best left buried. Now, confronted with living proof of humanity's survival, their worldview was crumbling. Commander Zara's final transmission before the explosion had reached the Vorthok flagship, carrying with it a message that would reverberate throughout their society. In her recorded words, she urged her people to reconsider their stance on humanity, to see them not as a threat, but as allies who had once sacrificed everything to protect the galaxy. Executor Varn, Jake said over a secure channel, his tone firm but respectful. Your Commander Zara gave her life to help us defeat the Void. She believed in humanity's potential, not just as warriors, but as guardians. I hope you'll honor her memory by working with us to uncover the full truth about our shared history. Varn's response came after a long pause, his voice tinged with something between regret and resolve. Zara was always different. She questioned things others accepted without thought. Perhaps it is time for all of us to do the same. Meanwhile, aboard the Concorde, Alex and Maria worked tirelessly to analyze the data recovered from the installation. The quantum resonance device had been destroyed, but its activation had unlocked a wealth of information stored within the ancient structure. Fragments of logs, schematics, and historical records painted a clearer picture of humanity's role in the Great Purge and the terrible price they had paid. They didn't just fight the Void, Maria said quietly, scrolling through the files on her screen. They tried to warn other civilizations, but no one listened. When the Void overwhelmed them, the Vorthok stepped in not to save humanity, but to erase it, to make sure no one ever knew what really happened. Alex nodded. Grimly they rewrote history to justify their actions. Humanity became a cautionary tale, a boogeyman used to keep younger species in line, and when the Void returned, there was no one left to stop it. But we're still here, Maria insisted, her voice rising with determination. We survived, and now we have a chance to set things right, to reclaim our place as protectors instead of myths. As the days passed, the human fleet worked alongside the Vorthok to stabilize the Kepler's rest system. The blockade had been lifted, but tensions remained high among the alien fleet. Some Vorthok commanders, like Admiral Korvath, refused to accept humanity's existence, dismissing the recent events as anomalies or fabrications. Others, inspired by Zara's sacrifice, began to question the official narrative, seeking answers in forbidden texts and hidden archives. Commander Lisa Barton found herself caught in the middle of this ideological divide. During her brief interactions with Zara, she had come to admire the young Vorthok's curiosity and courage. Now, tasked with maintaining diplomatic relations between the two species, she struggled to bridge the gap between distrust and understanding. You have to give them time, Jake told her during one of their late-night strategy sessions. Change doesn't happen overnight, especially when it challenges everything someone believes. Lisa sighed, rubbing her temples. I know, but every second we spend debating history is a second the Void could use to regroup. If they're out there, and I don't doubt they are, We need to be ready. Jake nodded. Agreed. Which is why we need to focus on rebuilding trust with the Vorthok, who are willing to work with us. Together, we can prepare for whatever comes. Next, back on the research station, Dr. Robert Hayes coordinated efforts to document the aftermath of the battle. The colony's population had endured days of uncertainty, sheltering in emergency bunkers as the fight raged above them. Now, as news of the Void Collective's defeat spread, they emerged cautiously, their faces etched with a mix of relief and lingering fear. Hayes stood on the observation deck, watching as repair ships moved among the damaged vessels of the human fleet. The sight filled him with pride, though it was tempered by the knowledge of how close they had come to annihilation. "Dr. Hayes," called a voice behind him. He turned to see Alex approaching, his usual disheveled appearance replaced by an air of quiet authority. "Alex," Hayes said, offering a tired smile. "How are you holding up?" "As well as can be expected," Alex replied. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us. The data from the installation confirms what we suspected. The void isn't gone, just weakened. They'll be back." Hayes nodded grimly. "Then we'd better learn everything we can about the man fast." "What did you find down there?" Alex hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Evidence that humanity wasn't just fighting for itself. We were fighting for the entire galaxy. The void consumes civilizations, turning them into mindless drones. Our ancestors realized that if they fell, everyone else would follow. So they made a choice to go into hiding, to preserve the knowledge needed to fight back. And now?" Hayes asked softly. "Now it's our turn," Alex said firmly. "The Vorthok may have rewritten history, but they can't rewrite reality. We're still here, and this time, we won't let the void win." Far beyond the Kepler's rest system, deep in the uncharted reaches of space, the remnants of the Void Collective began to stir. Though their forces had been decimated, their consciousness remained intact, spreading across the cosmos like a shadow. They had underestimated humanity once before, mistake they would not repeat, as the galaxy began to rebuild, unaware of the threat lurking in the darkness. Humanity prepared for the inevitable return of their ancient enemy. This time, however, they would not face it alone. Allies both old and new stood ready to join the fight. United by a shared understanding of what was at stake, the myth of humanity's extinction had been shattered, replaced by a new legend, one of resilience, sacrifice, and hope. And as the stars shone brightly above the Kepler's rest system, the stage was set for a new chapter in the story of the galaxy, a chapter written not by conquerors, but by protectors.